So first thing I want to say, guys, is thank you very much for coming in tonight. The purpose of this seminar is for those who have not had to track calories before or track what they eat. This is kind of, it's not designed, this seminar is not designed to tell you what to eat. This is merely a demonstration of what I eat over the course of a typical day and how I get the numbers from that piece of paper that says I should be eating 2,000, 5,000, 3,000, however many thousand calories, that says I should be eating X amount of protein, etc. How do I make that appear in real life, end up in here and record it accurately in here? So as we've got here, the aim of today's exercise really is to develop a fundamental understanding of how to record and log food using Easy Diet Diary. Easy Diet Diary is the app that I prefer to use. I've used a few in the past and I find it to be very user-friendly. I'm hoping that a lot of you have got the app downloaded on your phone and ready to go. If you don't, if you go to the App Store and search for Easy Diet Diary, it's easy to find and you should be able to download it while I'm gibbering right now. The key points that we're going to cover off on today: planning and preparing is top of the list. You cannot have a successful dietary strategy without planning and preparing it. To think that you can do it off the cuff until you've had lots and lots of practice is really probably a little optimistic, and chances are it's not going to work out well for you. The second part of this, being accurate with what we're recording, what we're weighing, is really important. Okay? It allows us to make smaller adjustments. So essentially, if we want to get into what's called a calorie deficit, which is essentially just eating less than you're using over the course of the day, which results in weight loss, if we want that to happen, we want this to be as accurate as possible. The greater the margin for error, the greater the drop we've got to make sure that you're in a deficit. And we don't want to starve you. We want you to be eating as much as possible and losing body fat at the same time. And it can be achieved, but it does require a good degree of accuracy on your behalf. Lastly, being consistent, okay, is probably the one thing that is the most straightforward thing for us to do. Everyone understands what it means, but people are poor at executing it. Life gets in the way, emotions get in the way. Oh geez, that chocolate bar's calling me. I really shouldn't eat that. Oh, but I'm tired. Oh, I could do it. Oh, I'm gonna have it. And what I mean being consistent, I don't mean you consistently eat the chocolate bar when you see it. It's not kind of what I'm getting after there. It's being consistent with doing all the things that we're hoping to look through tonight. Who hasn't had a DEXA scan before? Stick your hand up. So we've got a few in the room. See that? That's what you'll look like. Okay? Everyone looks pretty much the same. There's maybe a little bit more orange or yellow on some people, a little bit less on others, but essentially that's what your DEXA scan looks like. And people might look at me and go, oh, well, you're always lean or whatever. What would you know about dieting? You don't have to try or anything like that. Well, before the challenge last year, this is what I looked like. So through some miracle of God, because it had nothing to do with hard work, consistency, and being a very cranky man because I wasn't eating enough in the gym, I turned out to be like that, which you can barely see. Oh, great image. There we go. So what that means is essentially, without bullshitting, I went from around about 10% body fat down to about 6% body fat. And anyone who knows anything about losing body fat knows that the lower the body fat percentage goes, the more of a fight your body puts up. Okay? So when you go from 20 to 10, it's nowhere near as difficult as it is to go from 10 to 5. And going below 5 is pretty much, you know, unsustainable and probably near death. Point being is that, yes, it may seem like somebody who's already lean has it easy, but in actual fact, they have it much harder to make progress. They have to be much more accurate, much more consistent with what they do in order to get the same progress. Okay? When we move into our profiles, we can set up our app by way of going into our profile, and we can enter data into that. And you'll see that I've set my calorie amount currently at 3,000 calories. Now that's not going to be an indication for anybody else that that's a good number for them. This is simply what I've set my app at today for demonstration. But what I'm looking to hit in regards to that 3,000 calories, I'm looking at around 200 grams of protein. And 200 grams of protein is worked on around about 2 grams per kilo of body weight. Now we can go a little higher. We really probably don't want to be much lower than that. The lowest that we're looking at is maybe 1.6. Anything below that is probably not going to be doing us any favours. So they're the two things that I really look at to start off with. Calories and protein amounts. They're the things I need to bear in mind when I'm planning my day's eating. They're the things that I'm going to be considering. Protein particularly because I will construct my diet almost solely around my protein sources first, and then I will go from there. You'll see carbs and fats, and I've got really broad parameters for that. Basically the studies as far as which is better, low fat, low carb, etc., 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 crazy other diets that people pursue, the jury is really out as to which one is best. There's no outright clear winner. There are a lot of factors that come into play as to whether you choose low carb, high carb, etc. All right? A lot of those have got lifestyle choices. A lot of them have got to do with what you're actually trying to achieve by your diet. Do you require sporting performance? Do you require other things that may lend itself in one direction or another? So total calories is going to be the thing that dictates whether you lose or gain weight. Subset of that is going to be your macronutrient breakdown, and we know that consistently high protein diets have shown better fat loss than other diets that are calorie matched. So I've got 3,000 calories. I'm going to look at my breakfast to start off with. Now I'm a pretty boring person, and generally people that do this, I've got to face it, they're pretty boring people when it comes to eating, because it saves a lot of mucking around if you are consistent. So find some things that you like and then consistently stick with those if they fit what you're trying to achieve. So I've got some scales. Make sure you've got scales. I normally just whack my plate on my scales and I'll zero it like that. I'm going to choose the first thing I'm going to have for breakfast is some oats. So make this simple. I've got my oats here. I can, on this particular app, I hit my breakfast button. I can literally just go my barcode. You'll see a little camera with a barcode on it. It's a scanner that put it up to your phone and we go boom, and that gives me Coles quick oats. Serving size, that's pretty easy. I get my oats, tip them in my bowl, a little less than normal, but what have we got there? 182. I like milk with my oats. I'm not a water with oats. Anyone a water with oats person around here? Oh my God, I thought I was bland. You guys are really bland. So let's scan this one up here. Boom. And we've got some milk. I'm going to pour this in, and I don't actually set an amount for this. This is one of these things that I go, okay, when does it look like they're ready to cook? Oh yeah, it's pretty close there. We've got 300 ml of our milk. Boom, add that. And then protein powder. So this one here, the Whey Isolate, I quite like these ones. Bulknutrients.com.au. If you're looking for good, cheap protein, they're significantly cheaper than you pay for in the shops. They're really quick on delivery, got heaps of flavours, so worth checking out. Generally with protein, I like to get a whey-based protein, a Whey Isolate. I find there's a lot less crap in them, there's nothing else in them, there's pretty much just protein. Hey, look at that. We've got a bulk nutrients. We're going to do a 30-gram scoop. One of those. Add that. After I add my protein, I'm going to simply add some strawberries and some blueberries. There's certain foods that you've got to be very, very careful with when you weigh and measure. There are other foods that give you quite a bit of latitude. You could eat this entire packet of this and there's very little in this. You eat the whole tub of this, you're in a lot of trouble. Berries are one of those foods that you can get away with a lot of food for very few calories. So realistically, I cut 3 strawberries up. You can estimate them. So if you enter strawberries in here, I still weigh them generally just because it's easy. I zero, I throw it on and it tells me. So I can accurately do that. If I type in strawberries into my app here, what I'm going to end up with is fresh. Take an estimation. If I was to cut the end off this, that's 26 grams of strawberry right there. So let's multiply that by 3. Let's call it 70 grams here. You're like 10 calories. Blueberries, same thing, fresh blueberries. Let's call it another 50 grams of those. So what we've got for breakfast, nearly 1,000 calories for breakfast. It's probably more than a lot of people have, but it's less than I normally have. Obviously, if you chose this type of breakfast and you were on a smaller calorie amount, it's quite simple. You just don't put as many oats in. That'll reduce the quantity of milk that you're putting in, and the whole lot kind of cascades down. My alternate breakfast choice, if I'm on a cut, will be a Greek chobani plain yogurt, addition of same protein powder, berries. That's going to give me probably about a 500 calorie breakfast as opposed to a 1,000 calorie breakfast. It's always good to have a couple of choices for most meals and one you can default to, know them intimately, like them, and then it really makes it a lot quicker, the whole process. Okay. Mid-morning, as we know for the locals around here, I will go a cappuccino. It's caffeinated, it's a double shot, it's skimmed milk, and I'm going to go with 375. All right, so I've got my coffee, I've added that in. Next thing I'd look at mid-morning, quite like these protein bars as a quick snack on the fly. Believe it or not, as my calories go up, I get rid of extraneous protein. I get rid of this, I get rid of this. The reason being is because I'm eating so much volume of food that when you get to like 5,000 calories, you don't need to add any protein. The more calories you're eating, particularly for lighter people, you'll find the less protein they need to add into it because it's actually just contained in the volume of food that they're eating. Just while we're on that, in regards to protein and protein timing, plenty of information out there to support that protein should be distributed throughout your day. Okay, we don't want to go through huge periods of time without consuming protein, but there are a couple of things that you need to bear in mind with that. A lot of the studies that they do are on protein sources. So it might be a whey protein or it's a dedicated protein source. It is done in the absence of other real foods. Now, the situation is that when I add other real foods, the digestion time for protein, or when I'm eating protein out of whole foods, so for instance I eat a steak that's got fat in it, it slows the time down in which the protein is absorbed. So if I had 3 eggs, for instance, it might take, let's say there's 20 odd grams of protein in my eggs. It can take up to 6 hours, I think, off the top of my head, to get all of that protein processed and into your system. So the idea that the protein that I have at breakfast, depending on the source of it, might enter my system quickly, or it might take some time to enter my system. So the idea to go, all right, well, I've got to have my protein now, I've got to have my protein now, I've got to have my protein now, really is a bit of an illusion. All it does is consistently get you to have protein, which is a great idea, but don't think that what you're having right now is going to be in your system right now. Does everyone sort of understand that? And the more fat and things that I put into it, the greater the delay and the absorption, etc., etc. This stuff, yeah, that'll go in quite quickly, but if I was to have eggs, for instance, with whole eggs with the fat involved, that's going to take a lot more time to absorb into my system. As far as protein is concerned, basically just have it at your main meals if you can. Make sure that you're hitting your total number and you'll be fine. Okay, so we are at lunchtime. So looking at lunch protein sources, there's a few different ones that obviously you can choose from. Meat sources are going to be protein based. The things along the line of tuna, if you like that sort of thing. If you didn't have yogurt for breakfast, then potentially things like these YoPro type yogurts. These are the ones, you need to be careful with these though, don't randomly select them, check the food labels on them because you can get some that are full of sugar. These ones are not, okay? You've got very little else in them except protein really. Low fat, low sugar, I think 0 sugar, 0.3% fat or something. So if I'm gonna have a couple of rolls for lunch, I would look at my protein source first, and depending on where I was, if I was restricted calories or I'm not. But I know with 3,000 calories I can get away with a couple of these for lunch without any real stress about still having enough left for dinner. But that's going to take you a little while to figure out how much you're eating, where you are over the course of a day, and then sort of what that leaves you with. You don't want to be coming to dinner time and someone's cooked up a lovely meal at home and you go, can have this much of it. Like, you've got to plan. That's why planning ahead is really, really important. We'll talk about prepping a little bit later on about what options there are for that. But the main thing I'm interested in here is rule of thumb that I use. I have a protein source, so in this case, I'm going to run with some barbecue chicken or roast chicken that we do on the Weber at home. We do that every Sunday. We put it in a container, it sits in the fridge, and by today, it's sort of just about done. The thing I like to have with it is always have a couple of green things with it. All right, it tends to balance things out a little bit. If I've got a protein source and I'm not getting some of these other things in here, which are don't cost you any calories, but give you a lot of nutrients, they're the sorts of things that you want to fill out what would otherwise be a pretty, not only a bland meal from a taste perspective, but a bland meal from a nutritional perspective. So vegetables, vegetables, vegetables. Fresh roll, that's 65. Let's see if they're consistent in this bakery. They look about the same size. 135 between the two of them. Chicken. Got my chicken here. I've got some avocado if I wanted that, but I'm going to save that for dinner. So I would throw some chicken on, zero the scales, throw it on my sandwich here. 120 grams of chicken. So I'll go in, I'll go chicken. After that, we might put on some lettuce, baby spinach. Tomatoes, I would add, and cucumber, depending on how I'm feeling. Here's where we're up to. Not that far off my protein, so 166 grams of protein over the course of that day. I only need to really hit 200, so should be able to manage that by the end of the day pretty comfortably. I might look at an afternoon snack. Pepsi Max, shouldn't be, it's not great for you. It doesn't do really very much for you other than give you a bit of a caffeine fix. And then a banana. Now this one. This is a good guessing game. Banana, fresh, Cavendish. All right. Couple of bananas here. This is one that always gets people. 93. Anyone? We are going 156. 156 grams. So as you can see, two bananas, quite a bit of difference in size, but if you're casually walking through the shop, you probably wouldn't really pay much attention to just grabbing a banana. For the most part, you can eat as much fruit kind of as you like. However, they still count as calories. Yes, they are. They do not have the same capacity to be stored as fat as other forms of carbohydrate, not as quickly, not as easily. But they're not the only thing that you eat. As soon as you start eating anything else like this or like some of the other stuff that we've got happening here, then that still contributes to your total calorie amount, and that still has a proclivity to being stored as body fat. So you've got to weigh it up as a total. In saying that, have a few fruit sources during a day. It's a great idea. It's a far better choice than some other things. Moving on to dinner. So this is the one that probably causes people the most grief, because if people are eating dinner in a family, what's going to end up happening is obviously the meal is prepped and cooked for 4, 5 people, maybe 2 nights worth, etc. So we've got a big stack of food. The rule of thumb that I use is that if you have something that has a clear meat and vegetable component, and then another heavy carbohydrate component such as rice or pasta or some sort of bread attached to it, keep them separate. You can mix them after you've weighed out your parts. You can either weigh out a portion for yourself initially when you're prepping it and store that aside in a Tupperware container in the fridge so that you know exactly what it is. If you don't want to do that, then just keep the meat and vegetable components separate to the heavy carbohydrate sources, okay? What that'll allow you to do then is when it comes time to putting the thing together on the night that you're going to eat it, let's say it's over 2 nights or it's feeding a family of 5, you'll be able to, using this app, once you enter the recipe in, it will break down the proportion via weight. So it will say, if you've got something that weighs 1.5 kilos because it's made for multiple people, when you pull out 200 grams of it and weigh it, it will tell you how much protein, how much fat, how much carbohydrate are in that 200 gram serve. But I'm just going to use fajitas as an example, Okay, so this is our Tuesday, Wednesday night staple, I suppose. When we go into the app, what you'll find is when you go to more on the bottom right hand side, you'll see a recipe icon at the top. So if anyone's got the app, you're more than welcome to play with it while I'm talking to you. Just over the course of the last 4 or 5 years, we have a bunch of meals that we kind of default to that we've already got planned and set up in there. And at the end of this session, we might have a bit of a round table discussion on different recipes. I might even get Barn to set up something on Instagram so that people can feed recipes into it and take a look at what other people are doing. You might find some stuff that's useful. So when we look at a fajita mix, some of this is not going to vary week to week. So like the standards about what comes out of the box is going to be the same. What's going to vary obviously is exactly how much meat I put in, how much capsicum I put in, mushrooms, etc., etc. So there's a couple of ways that you can tackle this. You can weigh stuff and enter it in pre-cooked, and that will give you a weight if it's put in raw. However, you do need to bear in mind that if I've got 700 grams of raw steak, to give you an example, when I cook that, it's going to move down because of obviously water dehydrating it as you're cooking it. Water's going to exit it. It's going to come down to about, the one we did was about 630. So we got like a 70 gram loss. About what's that, 10%? 770? Yep. So about a 10% loss in weight when you cook it. When you put that over a lot of people in a big meal, probably neither here nor there. You know, if we've got 5 people we're feeding, it's 10 individual servings. My 70 grams, I divide that by 10, it's not really a big consequence. Where it is going to be a consequence though is if you've got a big lump of half a kilo of steak and then you cook it and then you record it, you want to be careful about how you record that and do it as accurately as possible. So either pick the barbecued option or pick the option that is most applicable to whatever you're going to, the way that you're preparing it. So if we've got rump steak, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in stir fried and I'm going to put in no added fat because I'm going to manually enter the oil that we put in there, which will be the only other source of fat that goes in. 3 teaspoons, so 4 teaspoons in total between the vegetables and all the meat cooked for the meal. The other additives, we've got green capsicum, red capsicum, mushroom. They're a standard every time. So all I need to do is when I've got that recipe on board, as I'm prepping it, just check the scales for the weight. Would it matter if you measured green capsicum, red capsicum, probably mushroom? It's going to have a massive impact whether you're 10 or 20 grams out? Probably not. If it was potatoes or sweet potatoes or something that's got a lot more calories in it, I would say, yeah, wait. But other than that, just let it slide and keep going. So I'll do my meat. We've got about 140 grams. Tortillas, regular tortillas, 40 grams. 2 tortillas normally, so we add that straight in. After that, I would lay out, a bit like I do with a sandwich, so if I'm going to lay out the tortilla, butter my avocado on there and then check the weight, reset it again. Meat, put half the meat on there because I already know we've got that entered in. Put some tomato on there, put my sour cream on there, put my cheese on there. Now what you'll find is as you start reducing calories, things like this, again, you need to be very careful with, so that anything that is really rich in calorie amount, you need to measure precisely because small numbers will make a big difference. With that, when you're doing sour cream and things of this nature, the idea behind the consistency is we can't manipulate where your calorie number is if we don't know whether you're gaining or losing weight by it. Okay? All it is your calories for everybody is different by way of your metabolism. There's a lot of moving parts that dictate whether you put on weight at a certain amount of calories or whether you don't. It's not to say, okay, you're 50 kilos, you need to eat this much, and this will be a baseline. That changes quite a bit individual to individual. If what you're eating is doing this, we can't get a baseline. Right? So the whole story is about creating something you can measure. If you can't measure it, we can't effectively guide you in the right direction to change it. So we've got 18 grams of sour cream there. We add that in. We'll add our cheese in. Cheese is another one. You'll pay the price. If you put in like well under estimates of cheese, that's going to be another thing that's going to throw it out the window. Probably use a handful like that. We've got 15 grams there. So between two of them, it'll be a 30 gram serve. We can add some carrot. We go about 50 grams of that between two of them. And some tomato, and we're just about done. So all these elements I would add individually. 338 calories remaining. We're in a good spot now where if I wanted to, depending on what numbers we're after, we'd have some dessert, or we could have something that's going to chew up a lot of calories in a small amount. Now my favourite would normally be protein numbers pretty close, so I don't need to worry about trying to layer on any more protein. My fat's quite low, 65 grams for that amount of calories is relatively low. I could probably put a few more in there. I could probably up my carbs. My sugars, what have we got there? 68 grams, yeah, moderate. So when we look at some of the stuff that is higher in the sugar, we've got the milk. Our cappuccino's got a bit of sugar in there, and our banana, not quite tops the list, but it's very close. But don't be concerned so much about the sugar quantity that you get in a banana. It's not the same. Your body doesn't treat it the same as getting a teaspoon of sugar and eating it. Okay, it goes through a completely different process. Sugar is not created equal. I think if you're a fruit juice drinker, probably not the best idea if you're trying to lose body fat. Stick with whole fruit. The things that I would look to probably top up based on what I've got here would be I'd increase the carbohydrate intake. So, potentially I could take the same quantities of what I got here and spread that across an extra tortilla. Things like protein pancakes that we sort of freeze and have in storage there layered, so you can just pull one out, defrost it, nuke it and eat that. Something as simple as, and albeit it may not sound very nutritional, but it would certainly get me my numbers or pretty close to them, could be something like peanut butter banana on a piece of bread. So let's look at the devil here as far as peanut butter is concerned. Just one spoonful is never quite enough, and if it is a spoonful, it's always a spoonful. Let's look at what they say one serving is for a start, and this might give you a bit of scope to understand how much most people have peanut butter in here. One serving is 22 grams. What do you reckon? You reckon that's going to be close? Doesn't look like much, does it? No. Move. Come on. Oh, this is great peanut butter. I should have been eating this stuff more often. It's just not going up. All right. So it's saying that there is a spoonful of peanut butter, which is actually pretty good. Yeah. I'm very surprised because I don't know that these scales are great, because that to me looks like more than 22 grams. Now one serving is 138 calories in one serving. So if you have two of those, you got 270 calories worth. So yeah, things like that can really sneak up on you if you start to indulge. So if you go, I'll just have a couple of spoonfuls, all of a sudden it starts to go up. So we've got our big crunchy peanut butter, and I've got to put it in here. 70%, 4 squares, and that is going to be 64 remaining. Yeah, I can live with that. If that was going the other way, the 64 over, I would, if I was 64 over and I was trying to cut, I wouldn't put up with it. 64 under, 3,000 is about maintenance for me. It's really neither here nor there. I try and keep within about 30 calories, 20 calories is around about sort of where I sort of sit if I'm trying to be really accurate with it. What you'll find is as long as your protein is right, I'm 203 on the protein, fats at 86. So with this stuff here, so with carbs and fats, we've sort of fixed this number, but we need to achieve our calories. So that means these can be variable. Now, depending on if you choose to eat in something like a ketogenic type diet, which is basically eliminating as much carbohydrate as you can, you need to compensate for that. Otherwise, you will have no energy. So that means fat needs to go up. So that means that a lot of the rules rules that we apply for fat if we're eating more of a balanced diet are not going to apply the same. There are some standards though that we want to stay clear of. Trans fats, so when we go and get our fish and chips from the local shop and it's been cooked in oil, stay clear of those. Everyone agrees pretty much, irrespective of which part of the dietary spectrum they come from, they all agree they're crap. All right, so stay clear of those. Saturated fat, there's a bit of debate about how much of it you should have. General guidelines, without getting into too much detail, is about a third of your total fat intake. And I heard an interesting rule of thumb the other day about fat intake if you're not doing a ketogenic diet and you're doing something that's more balanced between carbohydrates and fat, is that if you have around about 1 gram per kilo of body weight. So, if you're looking at your fat number, I'm about 90 kilos, so keeping that around about that 90 number or below it should be putting me in a good spot. And then saturated, I should probably be around about 30, a little tiny bit high, and I'll try and, sugars are going to be thrown a little bit by I could probably dispense with a couple of those by maybe getting rid of the white bread rolls, or alternatively, I could reduce the size of the banana if you're worried about it, but as I said, I'm not really concerned with that sort of sugar. The bottom line is that if you're mapping this out, this part of it here means that you can't turn up on the day and expect to know what you're going to eat. If you are doing that, you unfortunately will fail, or you will be very, very, very busy. For me, Sunday is like a food prep day, so instead of doing 1 chicken, we do 2. We do extra vegetables. Okay, guess what? You've got food for Monday, you've got meat that you can store in the fridge and eat for sandwich meat during the week. Bang, you've looked after quite a few things at once. Scrambled eggs and things like that, you can cook that in bulk and store it in the fridge, and it will last for quite a few days. Do your whole thing like we did with the recipe there before. Lay out all the components of our scrambled eggs in a bulk. Then divvy them up into the serving size that you want, whack them in Tupperware, whack them in the fridge. Pull it out on the morning, nuke it, eat it in the car, or when you get to work or whatever it might be. I spoke to you about breakfast, chobani yogurt, this sort of stuff. If you do things like, if you wanted to get some extra carbs in your chobani yogurt, you're looking for some more carbs, there's not going to be much carbs in that meal with yogurt, protein powder and berries, almost no carbs. You want to get some cheeky carbs in there, just crush up a Wheat Bix, throw it in, mix it in there. You can put that in the fridge overnight, you pull it out the next morning, straight off to work you go. Handful of normal quick oats, uncooked, bang that in there. Handful of decent muesli that doesn't have a bunch of crappy sugar in there, throw that in there. What some of you are going to find is when you start doing this, some of you are going to find that you're not getting anywhere near enough protein in your diet. Some of you might find that you're not eating enough, and you're going to wonder, how am I not eating enough? And why am I putting on weight? There's a bunch of questions that we'll answer at another time associated with that, but realistically speaking, when you start weighing, and really recording, you might be surprised at what you're actually sneaking in that you don't think that you're eating. Okay? The way I like to explain this process for those that say I like to eat intuitively is that you have to kind of earn the right to eat intuitively. So you have to know what that is. And the only way to know what that is to get a handle on exactly what you're putting in your body, exactly what that looks like. Once you've gone through that process, then you can go, okay, now I know this is going to tip me over, that's going to tip me over. I know when I get a piece of food, how big is it? How much of that can I have over the course of a day? If I have this, do I need to eliminate something else? That's intuitive eating. Intuitive eating isn't blindly going, oh, I feel hungry, I'm going to eat. Well, guess what? If that was up to me, I'd be eating this on a regular basis, quite frequently, many times a day, along with other things that I probably shouldn't eat, because my body tells me I want to eat, yes, but I make the choice about what I put in there. And more often than not, those choices are going to be bad if there's no repercussions, because it tastes good, so I'm going to eat it. Has anyone got any questions about any of the stuff that we've covered off on today?
Carbs, rice, potatoes, sweet potatoes.
Yep.
When do you measure them, before or after cooking?
In regards to potatoes, I always measure my potatoes after I'm cooking. So what we'll do is we'll go on there on the app and go cooking, blah 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 blah, no fat, and then whatever oil or fat that you actually put in there, you record that as your fat. Rice and pasta is a tricky one because some of the weights that you get, you need to look at the back of the pack, and you may actually need to do a bit of homework on whether the weight they have given you is the cooked weight. So when you scan it and the barcode comes up, you have to double check whether the weight they've given you is the cooked weight or the weight is the pre-cooked weight. Is everyone clear on what protein sources are? Yeah, that's some protein sources for you. Let me know that you actually know what they are. Someone give me something. Chicken, Chobani yogurt, tofu, fish, lentils, some nuts, beans. Anyone else got them? So, essentially meat products, obviously, some of the vegetable products that Jamil said out the back there. We've got our fish, we've got things like your yogurts and things, and obviously whey protein, it says so in the bottle. Things of that nature. Your oats have got quite a bit of protein in there, a lot of your dairy stuff's got some protein in there as well. So that's probably the main thing that some of you might need to focus on to, get a handle on getting enough of that and being able to distribute it through your day. Now, as far as an actual fat loss is concerned and weight loss and all the rest of it, yeah, you could probably construct a diet that was pretty shitty, and as long as it met a reduction in calories, you could lose weight. But what you'll find is that things like energy levels, things like sleep, things like body's response as far as hormones are concerned, things like simple stuff that breaks down your immune system or gives you signs that things are not right, like skin problems, etc., etc., etc. Yeah, you can play that game about filling, the if it fits your macros crowd, but you do run the risk of other health implications outside of weight management. When you get your scans, guys, if you are having trouble coming up with a plan to make that work, let me know, because we will just sit down. I'll go through a list of stuff that you like to eat, we'll plug it in here, and then we will manipulate it to make it work with what you've got. There's no good coming in 4 weeks into the challenge and going, I don't know what I'm eating here, I haven't been recording, I haven't got the app, I haven't got that, because it'll take you another 3 or 4 weeks to get confident with it and to be able to actually manage it. So then we've wasted half of the challenge. So that's why we're doing this now. You've seen the process is not complicated, it is simple in nature, but you must be consistent with it, and it does require effort. And I know it seems really cumbersome, but you do it for a short period of time and you'll have it for forevermore. Kind of like if you're in a car and you want to get to a certain location and you've been going on that route 100 times, but you're the passenger. You may never actually know how to get there. As soon as I put you in the driver's seat, you'll do it once or twice and you'll know how to get there. And this is what this is about. This is about putting you in the driver's seat, not just giving you a food plan and then you go, well, it didn't work, I'm not responsible for it. No, you're responsible. You're responsible for what goes in. You're responsible for knowing what it is and then manipulating it to get a result. And we can help you do that, but it requires effort on your behalf. Yeah, so the DEXA will spit out a number based on your body composition. That'll give you a start point, okay? And so that's based on how much lean tissue you have, all the rest of it. Now, it's accurate to the point based on a resting metabolism. Now, different people move a different amount during the course of a day, and that can have a fluctuation on it. Different people's hormones, such as thyroid and cortisol and other things that play with their sleep schedule, their work schedule, and all the rest of it, will interfere with that number. That's why it's really important that we get the baseline, we start it, we record it accurately, we record our weight, preferably on a daily basis. And it's not so that you're looking at the weight going, oh my God, I've put on 500 grams, oh my God, I've lost a kilo, oh my God. You don't stressing about it. All it is pointing plots on a map. So that after 2 weeks, when we look at it, is the trend going down, because your weight, when you plot it, for anyone who's done it, you'll see that it does this. Time, weight. Let's make me as an example, 100 kgs, 90 kgs, 95 kgs, 97.5, 92.5. So let's say, so it's a bit heavier. I'm here and I'm trying to lose some weight. I want to get down around here somewhere. And what will end up happening is it'll take my weight. And it might look like this. It'll do this. It's like that. And it'll be like, week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever. Something of that nature. So body water fluctuates a lot. Okay, generally speaking, I can lose myself. I can have a 2 kilo difference between one day and another. 0 to do with fat loss, all to do with body water. Okay, so when we do weigh ourselves, we want it to be consistent. Do not attach anything to it. It's not an emotional attachment. It is simply a number on a piece of paper. It is not something to look at. I would only advise people not to do it if they cannot separate themselves from the number. If you get emotionally attached to the number on the piece of paper, it's a bit like people who go, I'm a size 10. Okay, you're a size 10. And they get another brand of a size 10, which is a shitty small brand that is made something that doesn't fit them. They go, nope, I'm a size 10. It's going, like, it's a piece of clothing. It's the way that it's built. It doesn't matter what the tag on the back of it says, but they attach a psychological thing to it, okay? And that, if you're a person that attaches that to your weight and you find it that detrimental to being able to stay on track, that's the only time that I would say, don't weigh yourself on a regular basis. Let's do it once a week, and let's cut out all the other stuff. Or let's do it once a fortnight. Let's check in once every 3 weeks. We get something. The benefit being is that when you do it this way, there will be things, particularly for the ladies, that they can, rationalise it over the course of time. If periods are coming around or something like that, and there's changes in weight at particular times of the month, then they can see that and understand why it's happening. They can correlate it with something rather than just jumping on the scales. Oh my God, I've been dieting for 6 weeks and I'm 3 kilos heavier. Well, what time of the month is it? Is it relative to any fluid changes in the body, etc., etc., etc. By doing it frequently, if you can do that without attaching emotion to it, it's a good thing because it allows a very accurate tracking and allows you to look at where you are at and make decisions based on that. Okay. I hope some of it was of use to you. If you have any further questions or anything you want to ask me now, feel free to come up. Thanks very much, guys. Cheers. Thank you.